Hello, fitness humans. Welcome to WaveTalk episode 20. Can you believe it's already 20?
Not really, actually.
I can. It's been a really long time. Today, we are so excited to be joined by Georgia Ellenwood, who just competed for Canada in the Heptathalon. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, which we're going to get to explaining what that is here pretty quick. But for now, we want to get right into talking to her. So I'm going to pass this over to Dee, and we're going to start asking the hard-hitting questions about real estate.
Yes. Congratulations on your recent purchase of your house.
Thank you. I don't think people know this yet, but that is okay for you guys to announce.
But by the time this comes out,
Everyone will know.
everybody will know.
Yeah.
The housewarming parties, the gifts.
Yeah.
Here we go.
We'll send you an edible arrangement. Just make sure we have your address before the end of it.
Perfect.
So we're so happy to have you here, fresh off of the Olympics, which is super, super exciting. Well done for making it to that. Bravo, applause from the gallery. So you competed in the Heptathalon, and maybe before we start talking a little bit more about your experience, you can just give us a quick rundown of what is a heptathlon for all these people who are listening.
Yeah, so the heptathlon, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of the decathlon, but it's the men's version of what we do. And it's been going on for so many years. And the heptathlon is what the women do. It's on a point system. So there's 7 different events, which is why it's named the heptathlon. And it's over a 2-day period. It's going to be 4 events on the first day, 3 events on the second day, and it consists of running, jumping, throwing. It's pretty much a test of the ultimate athlete. And so each event, you earn points. And then at the very end, you tally up all your points. And whoever has the most points is the winner. So that means you don't technically need to win every single event. You just need to be the most well-rounded. So the first day is the 100-meter hurdles. And then you move to high jump, and then shot put, and the 200-meter. And then you go to sleep. And the next day you come back and you do long jump, javelin, and the 800-meter. So it's really diverse in the events to make sure that you get a little bit of everything, and then it shows who is the most well-rounded. So I think it's a really cool event.
Well, clearly you focused a lot of your life to get there and be able to do that.
It's like an event of how I wish we voted here.
Just put all our politicians through 7 different events and see who comes up with the most points.
But it's if we could rank our votes, I'm just saying that's then that's the whole thing. This is great. This is the perfect event.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, so we talk about the heptathlon. So what did it take to get to being able to compete in the heptathlon in the Olympics? We had COVID that happened, so things were delayed. You've done tons of training, worked with coaches. There's a whole mindset thing. There's a lot of travel involved. How was your journey to make it to the big stage?
Yeah, it's very hard to compare how maybe the heptathlon versus individual events. So the 100-meter or the open long jump, open high jump, because for the multi events, it's really big in Europe. So we have to travel a lot to get our Olympic qualifiers in. So there's something called the professional circuit, which is a series of competitions that you go to in order to qualify for the Olympics. But because Canada had such strict travel rules in the beginning, April and May, around that time, I was even if I am fit enough and I'm capable and I have all the resources here in Canada, it's going to be impossible to make it because I can't attend these competitions. And so that was the biggest struggle this year. And I fully believed in myself and I thought that I could make it to Tokyo, but being able to have the opportunity to make it was harder than actually going. And so I struggled a lot in the early stages, going to the airport, being denied of my flights, having the right documentation, but there's just so much gray area with that. And I don't think anyone really knew what to do. And so it was kind of heartbreaking to know that I might not get the opportunity to qualify. Luckily, I was able to go at the very end when it counted. And even though it put so much immense pressure on me to be able to do it in that one competition or in that one or two competitions. It worked in my favor, and I was able to perform in those moments. But I'm very sure that for other people, that wasn't the case for them, and they had one chance to try and qualify, and they weren't on that day, or they were sick, or whatever it was, and they didn't get to go to the Olympics because of it. And now they have to wait another 3-4 years for the next Olympics. So it is a lot, really mentally challenging, and I think this year was even more so than others.
That's a huge amount of stress to put on somebody that, one event can make or break 4 years of hard work. Well, longer, but it feels like a minimum of 4 years of hard work. How did you handle pressure like that?
Yeah, and I've talked about it with a few people. It's definitely like the battle it's as much as it is physical, it's so much of a mental game as well. And you have to be in the right headspace to be able to perform. No matter how fit you are, if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't have like a very healthy mindset going to the competition, chances are you're not going to do very well because you can't execute the way that you want to. And so I think that was what I found this year that allowed me to ultimately get to the Olympics, because I had to cope with like, if I don't make it, I'm going to have to be okay. If I do make it, then that's awesome. I know that I'm capable of making it. But I'm going to have to be able to cope with both alternatives. And I think that's something that I struggled with for a while, because I've been training for over 4 years, or my lifetime pretty much, to make this event. And you have to find a way to move on with your life if it doesn't work out the way you want it to. So I think I got to the point where I was like, why do I do this sport? I like it. It's fun. It challenges me. It makes me a better person. So no matter the outcome, I have all those things going for me. So I'm going to become a better person and athlete through these challenges anyways. So obviously I want to make it. And looking back, now I'm very, very happy that it was the case, but it could have gone a different way, and I would have had to be okay with that. And I don't think a lot of people are. And that's when they face these really dark moments after something like that, when it doesn't go the way they want it to. So I think that's why it worked in my favor, because I was prepared for both, but I wasn't expecting not to make it.
So one thing that you brought up through that answer was that it's something you'd been training for your whole life. So you're born, the doctor slaps you, and then immediately it's heptathalon? Or like what's...
And they put a label on my forehead, and they're like, heptathlete. And I was like, from then on, I have to be this. And somehow my parents made it work for me.
That's phenomenal parenting right there. But like, how long have you been training for this? Was this kind of always the way it was going? How did you reach because I don't ever think of a time in life where somebody like, I mean, like with soccer, it kind of makes sense but I don't know how people get into something like that.
Heptathalon.
So, yeah, I mean, like in elementary school, like you like tripped and fell and like threw a fork across the cafeteria in like kindergarten, and somebody was like, "I am a heptathlete, coach. You are going to be great at javelin. Come with me." Like, how does that happen? How does that work?
Ironically, it kind of works a little bit in that way, because it's very big on recruiting. Like, you see potential in people, and these college coaches and stuff see potential in people who have natural abilities. So if you see someone who has a good broad jump, or has a little bit of high jumping experience, someone who has generally good endurance, then you like look at across the board and see if they're a well-rounded athlete and go, that looks like a decathlete. I'm going to train them for the decathlon starting now. And so it was a little bit like that for me, but I explored a lot of the events when I was younger anyway. So I did like the 400 and the high jump and everything my brothers did. And so I think it kind of just fell into place. Like, there's nothing that outweighed the other. And so I just started doing all of them at once.
So you come from a family of random, whatever that was, it Greek or Roman like numbers, the hepta, the deca, like all those things. Like, you come from a family of those types of athletes, or is that?
I should maybe check on ancestry.com to see where this originated from, or if I was just like always a pretty average kid, and then I trained enough in all of those events and become became above average enough to qualify for the major event. Because it's not like anything. I'm like a true heptathlete, which means that none of my events are that much stronger than the others, and none of mine are too much weaker than the others. So there are heptathletes, which is what makes this event so interesting, is that there's so many different combinations that you can put together a point total.
Right.
And so for me, it's like someone, maybe one of my competitors might look at my scores and be like, oh, she's a threat because she has no weaknesses. But I also don't look like it would be easy for me to beat somebody because nothing stands out as being super impressive.
Right.
If that makes any sense. And so for to look at someone like me as a competitor, it's where I kind of sneak up on people, and at the end, my point total is way higher than anyone expects because there's no highs and lows. It's consistency across the board. So it's really interesting to look at that compared to other athletes, because some have like a massive javelin throw and then they can't run an 800. And sometimes my strategy outweighs that strategy. So it's really cool to see how all of that plays out.
It was very confusing as a viewer to figure out like who was leading the event. I was like, I don't know where anybody stands based on how they performed in these things.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that was definitely the toughest part of watching that was like
understanding,
not knowing how, like, because I didn't really understand that the point total like was all cumulative. So that makes a lot more sense to me now. So thank you. Now I have to go back months and tell my former self that it's okay. I now understand. We will get this information eventually.
So even though your performance is consistent across those 7 events, is there one that you find is just more challenging for you, either mentally or physically, or something that you just find you struggle with a little bit more?
Yeah, there is. I've always tried. I'm not like the biggest person or the tallest person, and a lot of heptathletes are like 5'10" or taller. Like you have to be quite tall for it because a lot of the events require you to have, natural height. And so, like the hurdles are lower if you're tall. High jump, obviously, if you get over a higher bar, you have longer levers in the throws. And so that's something I've struggled with a bit. I am good at the running and fairly good at high jumping for my size, but the shot put is something that I have a bit of a disadvantage in just because of my size, and I have to balance my body weight too to be able to cover all of these events. So that's something that I need to work on a little bit, and especially comparatively to the Europeans, they outthrow me in a lot of instances. So hopefully I'll figure that out next year. But it's kind of fun to have room to grow. Like I don't think I've fully hit my potential in any of the events, and that's why this event is so fun, because there's always something to learn and there's always opportunity to get better. So I think even when I retire, I don't think I would have felt like I reached my full potential.
And do you, like, you're going to continue obviously with this track that you're on, not to coin a phrase, but that, like, you're going to continue, like, try to qualify for the next Olympics and the next, I assume that there's other competitions outside of the Olympics. Yes, like
world championships and
yeah, actually this next year, and I think that's what people forget, is that there's other competitions other than the Olympics. Like we just don't train for 4 years and then compete. But this next year is the World Championships, which is in Eugene, Oregon. And then there's the Commonwealth Championships, which are in England. But they're so close together, and I want to go to both of them really badly. But the heptathlon is like a marathon. You can't do it like 2 of them in a week. You have to take a lot of time to recover. And so that's going to be a challenge for later, and I haven't figured it out. And maybe my coach will let me do both, but my body will obviously take a beating for that. And then I do want to continue training until the next Olympics, which is Paris 2024. And then we'll see how I feel after that. But I think at some point I do want to start my real life, which means like maybe meet somebody or have a family or get on a career path that is in athletics. Like after that, I feel like there's just so much room to find out more about myself off the track.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's you're kind of in this interesting spot because with a lot of our clients and listeners, they are people who are They have careers that are not related to athletics, and so they are prioritizing their jobs, their families, social events, and workouts sort of are the lowest on the tier, even though like they know it's important, it's for longevity, but it's not always easy to fit it in. So for you, I mean, even right now, I imagine it's kind of an interesting time that you're just off of a big competition. So like, where's the balance now while you're sort of recovering from the Olympics? And then where's the balance when you're ramping up training again? Like what does that look like for you?
Yeah, that was a really difficult thing to navigate right after the Olympics, because I had spent so much time, especially in the weeks leading up to it. Just track is like, everything is track. You're thinking about track when you're on the track, you're thinking about when you're off, you're thinking about it at every moment. And you try to find a balance, like you don't want to be, but you're gearing up for the biggest moment in your life. Like it's really hard to find a distraction. And so that was pretty much my whole life revolved around my sport for so long. I found it hard to find time for anything else. I found it hard to even focus on anything else. And then immediately after the Olympics, you're kind of like, okay, well, I'm not going to be training the same. What am I focusing on now? What am I training for? And the answer is you're really not training for anything for a few months. So like, how do you let your mind and your body relax and find like some sort of outlet in something else, which is really difficult. And so I think a lot of us Olympians who, I talked to a couple other ones, and they said that they had that kind of post-Olympic almost depression, just like you don't know where to go next in your life. And so you put so much time and energy, like anyone in any career, you put so much time and energy into something to achieve something. And then like, what if you get let go of your job? Or like, what if something happens, you know? And so then you have to
pandemic? You're almost talking about like a night.
The pandemic. I'm sure so many people could relate. And you just have to figure out like what other aspects of your life is there in your life that you can put some attention towards. So it's been an interesting time for me right now, just because that track and field is not at the forefront, and I've had some fun exploring the other opportunities, and I'm finally like kind of enjoying that again, because when you put so much time and energy into something and then you don't have it for a while, you kind of need to reset your mind and bring a different perspective to be able to enjoy other things. And so I've been doing like artwork again, and seeing my friends and family and enjoying the outdoors and things like that, and trying to put training in the back of my head for a little while. And so, yeah, I'm sure people can relate in any career path. Like we all have a really major passion, and I think we think about it 24/7. And so what can you find as a balance so that you're not so ingrained in that like you don't have a way out, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that kind of pushes me out to a question about this idea of like balance between like regular life and training, kind of pursuing your question from earlier. Is there like, so I mean, like through your sport, through the various groups that you're dealing with regarding the sport, is there any like support mechanisms that are provided, like counseling, like training, like not training, sorry, like brain training? Why are my words gone right now? What's happened to them? But like,
no, brain training is
like,
a good word.
Like,
I like
because
it.
That's you're coming from like a place of you know, like pressure that is going to be more than a lot of us have to deal with on a regular basis, right? And you're constantly like under that umbrella of pressure of performance. So like, is there any support mechanisms? Is there any like does Justin Trudeau come over to your house and like provide free like counseling or anything like that? Like, how does it work? I don't know how it works.
I don't think he knows of the heptathlon, sadly. But yeah, there is, and I think most athletes use it, and I've used it at points in my life. I think just now I'm at a pretty healthy place, so I find like therapy in my family and my friends, because they understand me. They've known me my whole life. But sports psychology is like a really big thing, and most Olympic athletes have seen a sports psychologist. And I think what people assume is that we only go to see a sports psychologist when we're in a really bad place, or if like we just had a tragic event or something like that, and you go to like heal. But it's also like just keep you on track, because when you're doing well and you're succeeding, something's going right, you're in the right mindset. So like, how do I maintain that over a long period of time? But luckily for me, I just have really supportive parents and friends, and I know that no matter what happens in a competition, that they're going to be there. Like, I'm still their blood. So, no matter what happens, like, we can all be sad together.
Was there ever like that like begs the question? Was there a point where you were like concerned that wasn't the case? Don't answer that.
No, but you get in your head a little bit. Like, you think that you're disappointing people, and if things don't go your way, if you're not like doing something constantly impressive, you think that you might like let somebody down. Even like the way that you let yourself down when that happens. Like, you think you're having that effect on somebody else as well. And most of the time it's not the case. Like, they're going to love you unconditionally. And I think that's where I'm really fortunate, is that my family does. And so, especially when that last competition happened and I was like, oh, like I might not make the Olympics. Like, how do I come to terms with that? And then my family constantly reminded me, like, just go out there and have fun. Like, we'll be here no matter what. So I knew that I was coming home to a family that knew me really for me and not by my performances. So
and I imagine that takes so much of the pressure off in that moment, because you are also like in the public eye to an extent. And I imagine that adds to a lot of pressure. So like, how are you able to sometimes filter that out and stay so grounded? Because you sound so grounded, and like you have those priorities in your support system, and like you've really fostered those relationships.
Yeah, I think a big part of a lot of the doubt or a lot of like the disappointment, I know my family is a consistent aspect of my life and most of my good friends, but I think it comes from like the social pressures of like social media and things like that, where like you post, or for me, like I do post a lot of things that relate to track and field, and even going into a major competition that might determine my participation in the Olympics, I'm going to have to post if I make it or not. And a lot of people are expecting me to make it. And so I think that's sometimes where I struggle. I have to realize that's not about like that audience, even though like I do want to include them in certain parts of my life. Their validation doesn't make me who I am. And so that's where I struggle. I still struggle. I'm never not going to. Like, I'm always going to be like, oh, great, I had a bad time. And sometimes I think like, do I have to post this? Like, I should have to post this because I show the good. I should show the bad too. But these are people that are pretty ruthless online, and they can say some mean things, and you want to avoid that sometimes. So I think that's the biggest, that's like the biggest challenge when it comes to knowing if you're supported or not. Because some people online do define you by your performances and can choose to get off of the bus, if they're not supportive, they don't want to be supportive anymore if you're not doing well. And so you really do have to find consistency and focus on that. Those people aren't as important,
filter out the bad shit.
Well, I think consistency too, though, right,
exactly.
is such an important messaging kind of like, I mean, like you are in a place where you've had to be consistent, right? Like your training has to be consistent, your expectations have to be consistent, right? And you've talked about all this stuff, but that's a really good message to go out to everybody that's listening to this, I think. And so brilliant of you. Like you either are going to become, some sort of a therapist or sports psychologist, just on rights of like how eloquent and like well-spoken you are about all this stuff. Or leader of the world or the evil empire, one of the two. Either or, well, you got our vote. It's fine. In the ranking, in the ranked votes, right? Like that's throwing back to that. But that idea of consistency is especially when we talk about like where exercise, where fitness comes into your life, your world, is a really important statement.
Well,
right?
Consistency of support.
Yeah.
Consistency of support, consistency of effort, consistency.
Yeah, instead of trying to constantly impress people, because you do get attached to that idea, especially it happens in so many aspects of our life. Like we're trying to impress someone we have a crush on. You're doing things out of nature. And you're kind of like, this person may not consistently like me if I wasn't always trying to impress them. So I think my biggest goal is to always find that common ground where people are going to love you and support you no matter how well or how bad or whatever, you know? So yeah, it can definitely be related to any
Do you have a
part of your life.
I was going to ask, so if you had to pick 3 pillars that basically have been a huge part of your success, what 3 would you pick?
Do you mean like in terms of milestones or 3 like keys that I take with me kind
3 things that if you didn't have, you don't think you'd be as successful as you have been?
Yeah. I think my family for sure. They've taught me to be resilient and to never quit. And I think no matter how tough it has gotten, I've found a way through. And it would have been way easier to quit, like way easier. And so I'm glad that they taught me that. So with their knowledge and support, I think that's one of the main things. I also think, like, I'm not sure who taught me this, but I think another pillar would just be to have a very strong sense of self. Like, and I think my friend group maybe have taught me that a little bit, just because they're all so unique and we come together and can be such independent people, yet like we work somehow. And so trying not to like always fit the status quo. I think being yourself and finding that in whatever aspect of life it may be is really, really important. And it has allowed me to be like a way better person. And then I also think like the value of like education, not even just in school, but like being globally educated, traveling, finding like education in everything that you do. So my sport has taught me a lot about life and even my schooling. I went to the University of Wisconsin and I focused a lot on education, and it has taught me a lot of things about my sport and how to improve my life. So I think those 3 things are definitely what has gotten me to where I am, not just as an athlete, but definitely mindset wise. Like I think I don't think I would have got to Tokyo if I didn't think this way, and because of those 3 things, I think this way. You know, so it was pretty cool.
And then, what were you thinking the moment that you walked into the giant stadium, like at the beginning of the Olympics? Like, what was the first thought that went through your head? I always wonder what athletes are thinking in that moment.
It's really, really hot.
Yeah, that, or I hope I look good on camera.
You did.
It's so funny because my mom knows me so well, and she like one of the first texts she sent me was like, "Well, you look good," and I'm like, "Oh, yes, like,
thanks, Mom." Go, Mom.
I know, it's so funny because like you do these introductions, like that's the first thing you do when you come out. It's like they have this big camera and they instruct you on how to come out. So they say, okay, we're gonna like be like 3, 2, 1, and then you come out into this X, and then you stand there, and then someone behind the camera is like, wait, and then they're like, okay, come through. So you don't know how long you're gonna be standing there, but the camera's on you and they're talking about you. So some people like plan something, some people just look really awkward, and so I'm like, oh, I don't have anything planned. Like, what am I gonna do? And so that was one of the first moments. It was just hilarious. I'm so nervous, but I'm still thinking like, oh, this is the first time that so many people at once are going to see me on TV doing what I do best. And so, yeah, it was kind of a funny intro. It worked out better than I thought. And then, and then it was just like, oh, great, another whole heptathlon. I'm going to start this thing at some point. So.
Yeah, the biggest hurdle was like the walkout, and then you're like, okay, yeah, heptathlon, that I can do.
That's so.
And you think, oh, great, I have 7 events before me.
That's so interesting to hear, like your apprehension over having a competition that you have so much passion for. It sounds almost like when I don't really feel like going to work. I love my job, but I still don't always feel like doing it. Do you find that happens before most of your competitions?
Yeah, that's honestly, it's probably exactly how you feel when you go into work, where you're like, this is what I want to do with my life. Like, I know it's bettering me, but I just don't want to go in today. Like, it is exactly like that. And so a lot of the times you're like, what I do is so cool, and I'm so lucky to have these opportunities. But it's 7 events, and I don't know if I want to put my body through that again. And I know it's going to be stressful, and it's going to be so physically challenging and all that stuff. But it's definitely love-hate. Like, it is the definition of love-hate. Like, I don't know what I would do with my life without it, right now at least. But doing it does not always make me happy.
This is like the most comforting thing for me to hear right now, because whether you're an athlete or, you know, just one of us regular people, you have those feelings, and it's very nice to know that I'm not alone in that, even with somebody who's so high performance and has such an incredible story. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, and I think it's the same maybe with you guys in work or whatever it is, whatever your passions are. Like, if you get too much of it, it can be overwhelming. But then when you leave it for a week or two, you're kind of like, oh, I want to come back to it. And that's when you know that it's truly your passion.
Yeah, I'm going to say that a lot of people don't feel that way about their jobs.
That's true.
I feel that way about my job.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. That's very comforting for us. Yeah, exactly. Oh, man.
Well, I feel it's almost like an identity crisis when all of a sudden you don't have it anymore, which is kind of what you were talking about earlier as soon as the Olympics are over. Where you're just like, I don't even know who I am without this thing anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a really weird limbo place that's very uncomfortable. So I really resonated with that when you were talking about, what do I do with myself?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think everyone experiences that if they have a true passion in their life, even if it's outside of work or whatever it is. Like, I think most people do. So, yeah.
Okay. So if we look at your athleticism basically as a career, like, what does your day look like when your 9 to 5 is athletics? Are you warming up? Are you recovering? Are you managing injuries? Like,
are there ice baths?
Are there ice baths?
Yes, there are. Well, I think my life right now as an athlete looks a lot different than when it did when I was a collegiate athlete. Collegiate athletics is pretty intense. It's, you wake up, you go to class, you go to practice, you go to another class, you do recovery, you lift, then you try and do homework, and somehow fit in your social life, and it's just like, you're exhausted. I think that's why it's really hard to reach your full potential in college as an athlete.
Yeah.
But now my whole life revolves around it. So I wake up, and I usually make my breakfast, maybe do a few business things, because I do work with an agent, a talent agent as well. So I have a lot of stuff to do off the track, which is nice because I like having that. And then I go to practice at around 11, and our practices, now that I'm not in college, we can spend as much time as we'd like on the track, which is good and bad. We start at like 11:30 and we go until about 4:30, maybe a little bit longer if we have a lift. And then after that, I go to the physio and I do my physiotherapy and recovery. That usually takes about an hour. And then I go home, and I probably am home around 6:30 or 7. And then I make dinner and maybe play a few video games, and then I go to sleep.
Just
it's not very exciting.
It's a normal day. It's literally like the 9 to 5 lifestyle. But
it is, except I'm exhausted after. My body is just like, even if I wanted a social life, like on those days, it would not be possible. So it is nice to have times like this, and it allows me to regroup when I need to go back to training, because I see all my friends at once, and I'm like, we're still friends, like I promise we are, and then I go back to train for a few more months.
So in that day, this may be a little bit off, do you make your own food? Do you have somebody create a meal plan for you? Like, I'm super curious how an athlete eats.
Yeah.
Did you have coaching in that?
I do often create my own food because I like the creativity to do my own cooking, but I have had, just on the agency side with working with my agent, I have done deals with food companies. So I would do deliveries every Monday and Wednesday. And it would just be refrigerated containered meals that you can heat up that are really nutritious, and they have all the information and all the ingredients listed on a big page, and they're catered to athletes. So I've done that for a while, which has made my life really convenient, but I found that I was losing the creativity and the hobby of cooking. And so I make pretty simple meals. Like I don't, unless I have time, I don't really get crazy with it, but I have no dietary restrictions or anything like that. And so I pretty much eat similar things for breakfast every day, because it's just, when I get into a routine, everything becomes a routine. And so even though like I would call myself a spontaneous person, when I get into the rhythm of training, it is so structured to the point where I eat almost the same thing every day. I go to training from the same time to the same time every day. And eventually I need a break. I'm like, okay, I've done the same thing for so long. I need to go visit home, or I need to go on a camping trip or something like that. So it's important to have mental breaks, even if you enjoy what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Good point. You're talking about working with a talent agent. What kind of things do you book outside of the, is it all just speaking for meal prep companies, or is it like what else do you do? Like, that sounds exciting. How have we not talked about that yet?
Yeah, it's really exciting and interesting, because it is, even though track and field brought this opportunity to me because of my achievements on the track, or maybe my presence on social media, whichever one it is. But it is really cool to almost do the entrepreneurial side of it. Like I studied that in college as well, and I'm getting the most use out of it, because communicating with different brands, seeing their like marketing strategies, building like a media profile to send to them, studying my analytics on social media are really cool, and just seeing what kind of reach I have and like the voice that I have online is almost weird. Like I don't know if I'm ready for that, but it is also cool talking to different brands and doing. I don't love to do a ton of promotional stuff, but just working side by side with brands is really cool, and understanding what they're about. Like I think coming up, I'm doing a speech at an event for transition lenses. So it's like sunglasses, but they're like really cool. Well, some people think they're cool. they're just really stylish glasses that you can wear indoor and outdoor. And they used to be something that only old people wore, but I think they're really cool. And so I'm doing like a motivational speech at their conference, and I'm like, this is something so interesting and outside of the box, and I meet so many cool people doing that kind of stuff as well. So I get excited.
You mentioned having a voice online, and you're not really sure what to do with that, and you kind of smiled. Have you thought about what you want to do with your voice online in addition to branding and that kind of marketing stuff?
I struggle with it a little bit, especially on Instagram, because that's my main platform. And I have always prided myself from being authentically myself in every area of my life. And I think that's why, I can't speak for them, but I think that's why people like following me. And so it's hard for me to now try to integrate like pitched posts and promotional posts within that, because I don't want them to think that I'm using my page purely as a business. And so I don't think people see also behind the scenes that there are so many other deals that I could take and make a couple $1,000s off of posting about it. But I want to keep my authenticity valued to me, and to keep my audience engaged with my page by being myself. And so I would rather turn down deals like that and create like a good image and a good, to keep the stereotype that I already have, than to make it all about money. So I think I struggle with that a little bit, especially when I have to, or I take business posts and I have to do those, which I really enjoy working with brands and stuff. I think sometimes I have to find the balance between the integrated promotional posts and being fully myself, and maybe making fun of myself a little bit too, because people really enjoy that.
We get a lot of love for that on our page as well.
Yeah, people love it when you're like kind of a little quirky and like joke about yourself and like make fun of yourself, and I'm like, I have no problem doing that, so keep it up.
Yeah, people like the bloopers.
They do. So I would love to know, what were your favorite moments that you had? Because I imagine that the Olympics was probably like the ultimate goal. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So when you went to the Olympics, what would you say was the biggest memory you have, whether it was actually during competition or outside of competition, that was the coolest thing that happened to you?
I think this is probably the biggest moment. And some people may not understand it as much, but to me, it was the biggest moment when I was down on the track, doing a high jump competition. So I finished the hurdles and I'm now doing high jump. And there's other races going on the track. And these are people that I've watched on TV, like these people that I idolize over pretty much racing in the same competition that I am. And it was the women's 400-meter hurdles. And there was 3 girls in it that were contending for the world record. And I was just like standing there, like about to watch this race and being like, I'm not in the stands right now. Like I am literally down here competing on the same track at the same time as someone who's about to crush a world record. And then they did just that. They crushed the world record. And I saw it right there, almost missed my attempt in the high jump. And I watched it, and then I just watched these 3 girls with their flags walking around the track. And I'm like staring at them like a major fangirl, just being like, we are equals. Like, that's so crazy to me. And just like being like, wow, I'm like exactly what I had dreamed of always being. And they're looking at me, watching me, and like, I'm just like, this is so cool. Like, it's almost like when you have like a major celebrity idol or something that you have a passion for, and you're like, that is like the person that I want to be, or that's the person that I want to like fulfill their footsteps or whatever it is. And then you're suddenly there, and then you have to tell yourself that you're there.
That's so cool.
This is really happening. And so that was like the coolest moment for me, just to realize, I think, that I was actually at the Olympics. Like I did all this work and I kind of got lost in it a bit. But that's where I like had a light bulb moment and being like, no matter what happens here, like I'm at the Olympics, like I'm still here. I still have to clear this bar. I was a little distracted, but it was really cool to be a part of it.
If I recall, you did well clearing the bar, right?
Yeah, and I think it amped me up a little bit. I was like, oh, they think that's impressive? Check this out. It wasn't as impressive.
I wanted to ask you, I kind of got chills when you were talking about watching 3 world record contenders. And what was it like to be around so many female athletes at that level? Because, you know, being in Canada, there's lots of female athletes, but when you go your day to day, you don't necessarily meet that many others. So going to a place like the Olympics and being surrounded by these amazing people, what was that like, especially as a woman?
It was so cool to see these women who have obviously dedicated so much of their life to doing what they love doing, and they've become very successful at it. And I think a lot of people don't realize the sacrifices that they've made in their life to be able to achieve this. And a lot of it is sacrifices in your own personality. So like you may want to take a different career path at some point in your life, or you may want to like have a family right away or whatever it is. And they have to suppress a lot of that in order to achieve what they want to achieve. But that doesn't take away that they still have a sense of humor. They still love other things other than their sport. It's just that they've decided that for this amount of time in my life, I'm going to dedicate all of my attention to what I want to achieve. And so I think people sometimes forget that we have very big personalities outside of our sport. And I realized that about these women as well, is that they're just so good at holding that off for a while until they achieve what they want to achieve. And that takes so much discipline. And so if I think that I'm doing that and I see them succeeding at even grander scale, it's just, they get all of my respect for being able to do that. And hopefully that they'll be able to reap the rewards of what they do want to do at some point in their life because they've achieved what they want to do. And hopefully that they can allow themselves to at some point as well, mentally, you know? So it's really cool to see that because they're people, like they're really funny and they're charismatic and they're personable. And I think we forget that, and we just think that they go out there like robots and they go and do their thing and then they step off like Simone Biles, you know, and then she shows that she's human. And so I think I realized a lot of that, especially meeting these women in person.
Do you get a lot of responses like that? Like kind of being treated like an athletic robot, in your own words, instead of a human being? Does that happen a lot?
I did see, like, I was scrolling through some videos while I was actually at the Olympics, and there's some Olympians making like these hilarious videos. They have time, so we're just like, they're being creative and stuff. And some of the comments are like, "Huh, Olympians are funny? I thought you guys just spawned in the village." It's like, no, we have personality traits that are other than performing. And I think people, the large presence on social media throughout the games is really good for us, because we're allowed to show our emotions more than we ever have before without at least like in-person spectators always being involved. So even though people are watching on camera, I think this Olympics was really special because it was a little bit more private in terms of showing raw emotion during the actual game.
Yeah, of course.
So I saw, even when people like had lost, they're like not afraid to show the disappointment. And a lot of times they have to put on a happy face for the crowd or whatever it is. Or the winners can celebrate as much as they like with their teammates and not have to suppress it or whatever it is because there's people watching them. And so it was interesting to see how raw this Olympic Games was in terms of emotion, which I thought was really unique to any other game.
Yeah, it was interesting watching from the perspective of just like the average person viewer.
Why'd you point at me? I'm not
because you mentioned
average, Cam.
No, you're not average at all. But you mentioned you were talking
okay,
about talking about average people before. This is. But no, like coming from that perspective though of being an observer watching it, that was really gripping to me, was seeing that amount of emotion that was going on. Like even watching your event, like some of the competitors, I think I can't recall, there was somebody competing, I believe from Brazil, and like the emotions were just giant. Like I was standing there with the Oscar, like ready to, like hand it over but I mean, like any of the events, like I am realizing now as you say that yeah, like it was a really emotional competition, which is maybe unique. That's a really interesting observation. Yeah, that's cool. Holy crow.
I think that's also the climate that we're in now, People are allowed to demonstrate their emotions more. And I don't know if that's because of COVID, but I think in part people have been allowed to actually be their raw, authentic selves and publicly a lot more than ever before. So I wonder if that might have played into what happened at the Olympics.
Unless people just couldn't hold back anymore because the pandemic was like the last straw that they were carrying on their backs.
Yeah, totally.
I think they had a whole other year to be like, oh, we're still at this, like 5 years running. And then that was the moment. They're like, 5 years, here's the moment. I'm going to let all of my emotions like go right now. So I think that was also it, just being like built up stress, trying to keep yourself held to this standard to achieve what you want to. And then you did it. Okay, well, I'm just going to let myself go for a second. And it was really interesting. It was really cool. And I think without the spectators, it allowed people to be okay with that within themselves, which is awesome. So I hope we get that again at the next Olympics and to show that this one had a huge impact on the people watching because of that. And maybe that is okay. We don't need to be the tough guy all the time.
For the next Olympics, do you have a preference of type of world calamity that you'd prefer to see? Like rather than a pandemic, should it be like a climate emergency, alien invasion?
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah, like do you have a preference for what kind of world calamity that we should be in?
Honestly, I feel like whatever it is, it cannot be worse. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. Because
I was going to say, don't jinx it. Oh, man.
Okay, what I'm trying to say is that I am equipped to handle whatever comes next because I don't think that at least like in terms of perspective, is definitely made me so much more grateful to do what I do. Yeah. But I'd also kind of treat it, which is sad. And I don't know about you guys, but it almost like, at the beginning of the pandemic, it made me realize how many things I look forward to, how many things I was getting excited about and hoped for. And then the pandemic almost trained me to not get excited for almost anything because it might not happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really sad. and I
That's
just
so
want-
dark, and it's so true.
Dampened expectations of everybody.
And everyone's talking like that. They're like, oh, we're going to go to Mexico like next month if we can, you know?
Yeah.
It's like,
But
it's just so sad because now everything's like, oh, I want to do this if the pandemic ends.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, we had so many aspirations. Now we're kind of taking it with a grain of salt, like, maybe I'll do that.
Now I'm lucky if I get like a nice family dinner this weekend.
but I think
So maybe you can see it from both sides. You can be like, well, maybe I shouldn't get my hopes up, or let's never take anything for granted, and let's be grateful for what we do get to experience.
But it's
know?
like the whole like Charlie Bucket's like approach to life, right? That we've all kind of had to take, where I think we have a lot of privilege.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, because
is
you
this
like
another reference that I have no idea what Cam's talking about again?
Prob-
No, I watched
probably.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Yes.
but like but where like we all had so much like privilege and we like didn't really think about it and whatever, and then this kind of like puts that all into check. So I think that's like, not to be pessimistically optimistic, but like it really is one of those things where like all of a sudden that first family dinner, that first like time that you get to go travel becomes so much more special now, like all of a sudden, right? So like, I don't know, maybe there is maybe you're right, maybe there is a silver lining to the whole like thing, right? Because you have all these cool perspectives that really are bottled in this moment, in that Olympics, because the next Olympics isn't going to be the same. The next family dinner is not going to be the same. You're going to remember how much you like dislike your cousin or your aunt or your sister or like whatever. Like it's going to be it's, like, oh right, you're the annoying aunt. Oh darn. Yeah.
So it's like Olympians are pretty relatable to most people. And we're technically average people, or like normal people, or whatever you want to call it, as well. We're just
Us normies.
we're specialized in something to a degree that takes us to a certain place.
So Georgia, this has been so fun hearing
Yeah.
about your like very unique experience as an Olympian, and we really appreciate how you've been able to, like, you're so relatable, and I'm sure our listeners and clients and stuff will be able to take away so much from this. It's been
thank
so
you.
lovely
Yeah.
for us to listen to this. You have such a beautiful perspective on like the struggles, the challenges, and the successes you've been through. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. That's all I have to say.
That's not a very good outro.
Yeah, well, I also want to thank you guys for having me on this. It's been a lot of fun, and it allowed me to share things that I don't usually get to share. So it's been really nice talking to you guys. My Instagram is, I'll say it first, it's George _A, so Georgia, but it's GEORGE _AHHH.
So listeners, make sure you check out her Instagram page, because she has a lot of amazing content on there, and you can hear through her voice and through this podcast that she only shares her most genuine self, which is so rare in Olympians. So we thank you so much for joining us today, and we hope everybody really enjoyed this podcast as much as we did.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that we can help anybody out with, of course, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to work with you.
Maybe we can get you to the Olympics. Maybe.
I mean,
we're pretty good coaches.
maybe we can
We
get
can train
you to be
and carry you there on Cam's back.
Oh my gosh. Maybe we can get you just to be consistent enough with your exercise that you feel like an Olympian.
Yes,
How about
that
that?
we can do.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Well, this has been episode 20 of WaveTalks Fitness for Humans. We are 3-Wave Fitness. That is Georgia. Everybody is amazing, and we hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. How about that?
Beautiful.
Yeah?
Thank you, Georgia.
Thank you so much.
You were awesome.
This
Thanks.
was great.
So much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. See ya.